This is Kathy from Gadgets Top 321. In today's video, I'm going to be taking a look at Graf von Faber-Castell Stone Gray. Now, I originally purchased it in cartridges, but I used an ink syringe to remove the ink from the cartridges, and I've been storing it in an ink sample vial. And today, I'm going to be testing this ink in a variety of pens and nib sizes, ranging from a Pilot Extra Fine to a 1.5 stub nib. And I'm going to begin with the extra fine steel nib in a Pilot 78G Plus. Good so far. It's not scratchy, and it doesn't feel dry either. But as far as legibility goes, it's a little bit thin. But I'm just going to put not scratchy. It just doesn't have the legibility that I would like. Next, I've got a Pilot Pereira with a fine steel nib. Not a whole lot of difference in smoothness. It's very pleasant, very usable, but the legibility is a little bit better. So I'm going to label this one nice. Very usable. Next, I have a Pilot Custom 74 with a fine 14 karat nib. Very pleasant, very smooth. I can tell it's putting down more ink. Oh yeah. So I'm going to put smooth on this one. Alright, I like that. This Custom 74, I really enjoy using it with good paper. Alright, next I've got a Kaweco Perkeo all black with a medium nib. Very pleasant. There is feedback, and it's not very wet, so I'm not going to label it smooth, but I will label it nice. It's very pleasant, and I'm seeing some shading, so that adds to the niceness. Okay, next I have a Pilot Metropolitan with a cursive medium nib. This one feels a little dry. Yeah. So I'm going to put dry on that one. And you can tell it's just looking a little flat. You're not getting the darker tones. Next, I've got a Nemesign Singularity with a 0.6 stub nib. I can tell more ink is being deposited on the page, and it feels very smooth. This is very enjoyable. That's nice. And you're seeing the darker tones. I like that. Next, I've got a Jinhao X750 with a 1.5 stub. Oh, I didn't do my side strokes. Very, very enjoyable. I'm curious to see how much shading shows up. Alright, I'm going to let that dry a little bit. And while that's drying, I'm going to take a look at some writing samples on other papers. First, I've got my ARC notebook, which is a little more absorbent. Again, the extra fine was not scratchy. Now, as I was writing this, I thought the legibility, just like on the Tomoe River paper, I wasn't crazy about the legibility, but now that it's dried, it's not bad. I mean, it's perfectly usable if you need an extra fine nib. I preferred the Pilot Prera, and usually the Pilot Custom 74 is a little too wet for this absorbent paper, but you can see, you know, it didn't soak immediately into the paper, so it was much more pleasant. The Prera, the Custom 74, and the Perkeo were my favorites. Now, the Metro was okay on this one. It wasn't too dry. Now, the stub nibs, they just felt a little too wet. You can see the ink soaking into the paper. It's tending to feather a little bit. Let's see. But it's not really wanting to soak through the paper too bad. Just the 1.5 stub is the only one that really had any problems, and it was putting down quite a bit of ink. On my Rhodia paper, the extra fine was a little dry, and you can see, yeah, the legibility on it's not the best. The Prera fine, that still fine, looked really good. And as usual, the Custom 74 performs really well on good paper. The Perkeo was good. The Metropolitan felt dry on this paper. But now that we're getting to good paper, that Nemesine was, I said, nice with the exclamation point. Now my lighting in here, it's evening, so I don't have the best lighting. I'm seeing a little bit of shading here. It was nice. This ink actually reminds me a lot of the Monteverde Moonstone. The Moonstone has a little more brown to it. This leans a little more gray, but the behavior of those two inks are very similar. Next, I've got my 20-pound copy paper, and everything performed really nicely. It did soak into the paper a little bit quicker. Everything performed nicely except for the really wet stub nibs. They were just a little too wet and sloppy. They bled through the paper a little bit, not as much as I would have thought they would, but everything performed really well except for the stub nibs. Next, in my Leuchtturm notebook, let's see. You can see there's, I don't know if you can tell. Yeah, I think you can see this is gray, but it's got just a touch of brown to it. I'm not seeing any sheen. When it goes down really heavily, it's just a nice, flat kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? A nice matte finish to it. I actually kind of like it. You can almost see a halo of extra darkness on the letters. Okay. And finally, on the Tomoe River paper, let's see. No sheen. Everything did pretty well except for the extra fine, and my Pilot Metropolitan felt a little dry. My favorites were the wetter nibs, like the Custom 74 and the Nemesign, but the Kaweco Percao medium, it was a nice medium amount of ink being put down, so you're able to see more of the shading. Yeah, I've been a big fan of this ink for a long time. This is one of the first inks I purchased. These little cartridges are probably 6 years old. So, or maybe they're just 5 years old, but so I just recently removed, I had just a few cartridges left, and I removed them and put them in this sample vial so I could dip. But I really like this stone gray. All right. If you found this video helpful, please give me a thumbs up, and if you'd like to see more videos like this, please subscribe to my channel.